these are the classification of data. We will discuss, we will try to understand the difference between the following categorical following class data. So, qualitative versus quantitative, structured, semi structured, unstructured, metric, non-metric, primary, secondary, human generated, machine generated data, online, offline, real time, near real time data, static, dynamic data, small data, big data, streaming data, perishable data and embedded data, and discrete and continuous data, subjective, qualitative, quantitative data, subjective, descriptive data. So, let us understand what is qualitative data and quantitative data. So, qualitative data is basically expressed in the subjective terms. It is descriptive in nature and it is expressed in terms of text, names, subjective narratives, symbols or number code. So, for example, your tutor message is example of qualitative data, voice recording is a qualitative data, medical prescription is also qualitative data. So, this is qualitative data. Now, what is quantitative data? Quantitative data means set of numbers, objective type of data that can be measured by measured objectively and expressed numerically, that is quantitative data. So, for example, salary of employees is a quantitative data, it is structured, it is very quantitative data. So, next the age is also a quantitative data. So, let us understand the difference between structured, semi structured and unstructured data. Semi structured data is highly organized. For example, take an employee table, it is organized in the term of columns and rows, it is highly systematic, one can visualize the table, it is fixed, there is no difference, there is no change. So, it is more about say employee table is with rows and columns, this is structured data. In database, for example, with different type of variables is a structured data, table is a structured data. So, here schema is known and schema is fixed and known and very easy to operate, very easy to comprehend, very easy to analyze this type of data. The second type of data is unstructured data. Unstructured data means it is not organized in any form, there is no fixed schema, it can be changed. It can be changed and the schema is not known and not easy to operate this type of data. For example, text data, block data, log files, audio, machine data, emails, Facebook data, LinkedIn data, WhatsApp data, Twitter data, these are all unstructured. There is no format, it just different type of length and structure. So, there exists no standard in the organization data. So, that is the reason why it is called unstructured data. Sometime unstructured data can have some structured data, then we call it as semi structured data. Semi structured data, for example, you take the example of prescription, there a doctor writes something that is unstructured and number, what medicine, what date, this is structured. So, this is very much unstructured, semi structured data. X-rays is an example of example of semi structured is X-ray image, XML, JSON file. So, but the data which is in semi structured is difficult to manage and operate and there it is not easily available, tools are not easily available, techniques are not easily available to operate on this such type of on semi structured data. Even difficult to operate, difficult to manage structured data, unstructured data and semi structured data. So, now let us understand what is metric data and non-metric data. Metric data, as you know, nominal and ordinal data are known as metric data. These are all quantitative data, basic mathematical calculation can be applied based on metric properties, where data involves defining the discrete between the values. So, interval and ratio are an example of metric data, it is a good data, but it is not easily available in the reality. But in case of non-metric data, the data where the distance between the values cannot be measured. You know, we discussed about two type of data, nominal and ordinal. The difference between these two is not exist and also not measurable, not known. So, these are called non-metric data, but that also data is available in reality, and there are many tools which can be applied on non-metric data. So, next is primary data and secondary data. Primary data, these are the primary data. You must have heard a lot researchers talk about primary data and secondary data. The primary data is collected directly by the researcher from the primary sources. So, it can be collected through various ways, for example, observation, survey questionnaire, interviews, experimentation, FGD, focus group discussion, and projective techniques. So, primary data is good data, and but it is costly, which we will discuss now. The secondary data is the data which is prepared by some other person. It is already collected and kept by someone else, somewhere else. It can be in the database. So, research agencies, they collect this type of secondary data for their own purpose. It is not as quality as primary data. It is different. It is little already your objective is different. So, researchers can use this secondary data in their research study considering this relevance. So, generally it may be published some years back, it is used in journals, computerized database, syndicated service. So, but it is a different type of data and less value compared to primary data. Primary data, as I told you, is very costly, because you have to meet the person, get the data. You just talk to them, find the data using questionnaire, surveys. So, you collect primary data front to front, you can ask the qualitative data, primary data, but secondary data is already covered, collected for some purpose by some people and kept somewhere else. So, you just go and use it, but you never know what was the purpose of that secondary data which was collected, and you are using this data for this purpose, it may not work. So, the difference between this primary data and secondary data are basically based on the primary parameters. Time taken, primary data is very hot, means it is real time, it is recent. You go and collect according to your requirement. Primary data is costly compared to secondary data. Secondary data is collected through various ways. Available, primary data is also may not be available, because if you do not get that person, you cannot get the primary data. You interview the data in person, you get the data, but in case of secondary data, it is collected and kept. Secondary data is little bit easier, is available. It also may not be available, if you search some secondary data, it may not also available. So, both the cases. So, meeting needs of the problem in hand. Secondary data may not meet your problems in hand, it may not be relevant, it may not be accurate, there is a time lag. Some data was collected 20 years back, you is secondary data, you are collecting the data, you are using the data now. So, dependability is very less in case of secondary data compared to primary data. So, for example, credibility, reputation and trustworthiness of the source, these are all varies from primary data and secondary data, and primary data is more credible compared to secondary data. But there are some research that says that secondary data is better than primary data, because many things are considered in secondary data. Primary data, if you are not collecting proper way, it is not good compared to secondary data. So, basically people say primary data is better data than secondary data in case of research, but it is not possible to get primary data. So, hence you depend on secondary data. The next category of data which we are going to discuss is human generated data, that is, and non-human generated data. You must have heard about slot machine, different type of biometrics, all those things. So, nowadays non-human actors are more than human actors. Non-human actors like machines takes data or captures data and generate data more than that of the human. So, that is why we are talking about, and nowadays there are many data acquisition technology, for example, RFID, Bluetooth, camera, like for example internet, for example, GPS, there are many technology available, point of sale. For example, medical doctors use different type of blood pressure machine, X-ray machine. These are the machines that capture data or generate data. These are called machine generated data and machine generated data, and so these are generated by machine, non-human. Human data, you have lot of data, email, you write Facebook, you write Twitter data. These are all human generated data. You generate data. So, automatically without any human intervention data, that is basically about machine generated data. Now, let us understand what is online data and offline data. Online data is data that is available on the over internet. Online means connectivity. For example, online shopping, online booking of movie tickets, online checking of results. These are all examples of online connectivity or online data. Most of the activities you involve online. So, that is, and you create online data, you feed online data, you generate online data. So, that is called online data or real time data, online data. So, next is offline data. Offline data is data that is available in the manual system and without computer or internet, not connected to the internet. So, there are many offline data. You create data on a register, that is offline data. You create data, you enter data in some system, it is offline data. You are not connected with information technology, then it is online data, offline data. So, you now understand the difference between offline and online. Online data is more prominent in e-commerce, internet, web systems, intranet. These are all online system, whereas offline system is more manual in nature. Now, let us understand the difference between real time data and near real time data. You must have come across real time data in case of you do some transaction ICICI Bank or any type of internet based applications, you work on a real time basis. So, where you need to put data on real time basis or real time data is generated. So, this is real time data where it is delivered, the data is delivered instantaneously after collected without any delay, and the response time is mandatory. You ask it and then the response will be given in a mandatory time, means 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then if the response is not got, then it is the system crashed. So, bank ATM, credit card, fraud detection, buying an air ticket are an example of online data which is available online. So, in the next real time. So, the next one is real time near real time data. Near real time data exists in India, most of the places real time systems are not available. So, near real time is generated quickly soon after they occur, but the response time is not mandatory. It is not optimized to be fast as possible. It is less real time than the real time. The near real time is the response is not instantaneously, it is delayed, and the delay can be in minutes, can be seconds, can be milliseconds depending on the applications. So, now you understand, we discussed the difference between real time and online data. So, real time data is more applicable in various applications which is real systems, where response time is mandatory, and so this is real time and near real time data. Now, let us understand the difference between static and dynamic data. This is one type of data which you come across in various systems. Static data is fixed data, it does not change on a real time basis. Okay, it is not available on a real time basis. It is self controlled, it is not frequently accessed. For example, when you join a college, you provide your data, for example, name, date of birth, you never change the data frequently, it is static, more or less you never change those data. Your Aadhaar card number, these are static number, you never change. But in case of dynamic data, the data changes once it is stored. It is updated depending on the requirement. Whenever there is a requirement, you change the data, then it becomes statics. After some days, subsequently it is converted to static data. For example, savings bank account. Savings bank account is a dynamic data. You keep on using the savings bank account and the amount is changing dynamically. So, this is an example of dynamic data, but if you do not change, then it becomes static. So, for example, you change your savings type, then it becomes static. Now, let us understand small data versus big data. You must have heard a lot about small data and big data. Small data means data that you can comprehend, that you can understand, that you can manage of your own, your human brain can comprehend, that is called small data. It is very less volume, format is very fixed or static, and the type of and is such a type that human can understand, can comprehend the data, but and then you can apply any type of traditional data processing applications and techniques on this. So, this type of small data is captured or controlled, collected in a controlled manner, and part of it as a database system and various applications. Generally, this type of data is small data is highly structured. For example, relational data model, database management system, it is a small database. So, small data. So, it can be put in table and relations. So, you can one can understand table data. So, it is a small data. So, there are analytical techniques which can be applied on small data, but nowadays you must come across the concept of big data. It is a buzzword, big data. So, everywhere people are talking about big data, banks, insurance agencies, telecom majors, they are all talking about big data. So, big data users like Google, eBay, LinkedIn, Mashi, Caesars, Entertainment and Facebook, these are all users of big data. In fact, Facebook, Google, they have created the concept of big data. There are three major features of big data. Big data means volume, the quantity of data, velocity, the speed of the data, and variety, the type of the data. So, these are the three type of things that makes the data different from small data. And volume, for example, Facebook data, huge volume, Twitter data, huge volume, velocity, it comes very fast, Twitter data, it is created very fast and it will reach you very fast. Similarly, variety, there are different type of data, structured data, unstructured data, semi structured data. So, these are all big data. Big data means it has certain characteristics. The characteristics are, for example, lack of structure, they do not have any fixed structure, the structure changes very fast. The schema, it is called schemaless, there is no schema, any type of structure you can face, and the opportunity it creates, the low cost technology used, these are the main characteristics of big data and big data technology. And this big data, the main features of are volume, variety, volume, velocity, variety and veracity. I have already explained volume, velocity, variety. Let us understand the meaning of veracity. Veracity word is coined by IBM and it is nothing but conformity to the facts such as accuracy, quality, trustworthiness and variability. So, these are the characteristics of big data, and big data is nowadays everywhere, it is now the recent revolution. Of course, small data exists and you use different type of statistical techniques. So, We now discuss small data and big data. Big data is the recent phenomena where volume, velocity, variety, veracity are the major characteristics of data. So, the data is, there is a lot of challenge to manage this data. You need different type of technology, different type of techniques, different type of methods to store data, to analyze data, to process data. This data is not easy data. It is difficult to process unstructured data, semi-structured data, different variety of data. The variety data can be, it can be machine data, it can be speech data, it can be voice, it can be some type of prescription, it can be any machine without any structure. So, this is a difference between data, small data and big data. So, let us understand streaming data, perishable data and embedded data. These are the new data types evolved in the industry and reality, and we need to know this data very well. So, let us understand what is streaming data. Streaming data, that data that is generated by many data sources, generated by as a constant flow, and data that is generated as a constant is called streaming data. Similarly, dynamic data is generated by many data sources. This new data type of data gained in significance in the context of social media. For example, log files generated by mobile applications, Twitter data, these are all streaming data, because it continuously evolved, continuously flowing. Now, coming to the perishable data. Perishable data is nothing but fast data, means you must capture the data as soon as possible, otherwise the value goes, it is of no use, the value is lost over period of time. Perishable means when a minimum amount of time is left to act upon it, leading to some action. For example, you capture, you analyze, you process as soon as you get, otherwise the value is lost. So, this is the important context of big data and big data analytics. So, perishable data examples are health related system such as blood pressure, ECG, location data in a retail store and clickstream data, mobile devices in data, mobile devices data, stock market data. These are all perishable. Once it is generated, you must capture it, use it, otherwise it is of no use. You must get value out of it immediately, otherwise it is perishable, it is lost. The next one is called embedded data. Embedded data is any data which you put extra when recorded. When recording is done, the data related to some activity, you take some extra data. For example, you are entering your data in some form, location data is created and recorded. Location data you have not given, but location data is embedded in the data with other data set. For example, when you enter or you put money in a system, then it will take your data, money data, whatever money you put, as well as it will take your location data, which browser you use, all type of data is required. It can be single value, it can be multiple use. So, this is about the embedded variable location and value is set to India, that can be set. So, we understand different type of data types. Now, let us understand the different type of embedded data, perishable data in detail. Now, let us understand the granularity of data. What is granularity of data? Granularity means detail, how detailed the data is. The more the granularity, better levels of detail, and so that analysis can be done better, processing can be done. So, processing of higher granularity data leads to better insights. So, you get more insights if the granularity is very high. For example, if I ask you what is the sales, if you give sales of every month and I can find out sales of year, sales of 5 year. I can do all type of analytics because you have the granularity is sales at a particular month. But if you give 5 year sales amount, I can't tell you what is the sales of a particular month, because it is lower granularity, details are low, it is mostly summarized. You have already summarized the data and your granularity is lost. How can I process more? How can I get insights? If I ask you what is your age, you say that I am old. Your granularity is lost. If you give me date of birth, I can find out insights. For example, I can find out which day you have taken birth, or what is the month, what is the year. But if you say young or old, you have summarized to a higher level, which I can't understand, which I can't go back to granularity. So, sometimes it is impossible to get higher granularity data from less granularity data. So, it is impossible to get daily sales data from yearly sales data given, whereas it is very easy to get monthly or yearly data sales from daily sales data. That is the reason why granularity data is very important, and most of the database system, data warehouse system, they capture granularity data.